Hi, everybody, and warm welcome to our panel discussion titled Beyond Office Hours. We will discuss how employers in Finland are currently ensuring that people moving to Finland can live full lives and feel a sense of belonging both during and outside of office hours. My name is Pia-Pentti, and I'm one of the organizers of today's events, and lucky enough to spend the next 45 minutes with you and our panelists. Before I introduce our panelist, just a quick reminder that our event follows the safer space principles. So please keep that in mind. And if you need help at any point, please do ask. My colleague is in the chat to support you. Feel free to share questions during our discussion on the chat, and the most upvoted questions will be answered at the end of our panel discussion. So joining me today are Juho-Tuomas Järvikangas from the City of Helsinki Migration Affairs Unit, Owain Hopeaketo from the trade union TEC, and Visa Varpenius from Key Relocation. But let's get the session going with our first question so that you can introduce yourself. Let's start with Juho-Tuomas, then Owain, and then Visa. And the question is, can you start by introducing yourself and sharing a story of when you have felt truly included or excluded?
Thank you, Pia, for the introduction and having us in the panel. Sure, I can. I'm Juho-Tuomas Järvikangas, and I work as the team lead for the Migration Affairs Unit, as Pia said, and our team and I are responsible of having the service point of International House Helsinki here in Helsinki, and we offer services for international newcomers that are moving to Finland and especially to the Helsinki capital region because of work studies or entrepreneurship, and there's all kinds of services from before moving to Finland, then authority services when actually getting here, and then support and guidance services in the longer run and staying in Finland. But I'm sure that we get to discuss about some of these examples in later questions in this panels. But and then the other question about the feeling included or excluded, and I actually asked my team members that whether this is a good example. And I asked that do they have any good examples about our team and how these things have worked. But there's a very personal example, and this is not from working life, but I think that the many feelings of this experience still can be also things that happen in working life. But the thing for me was that I wanted to tell that I used to play football quite a bit, so soccer, if there's some visitors from North America as well. And in a team, I used to, at the time, this was like 15, 20 years ago, and I used to play in the men's team at the time. And we had a new coach, but for some reason, we didn't get along too well with the coach. And I had been playing in the first team, in the opening squad for the whole time that I had been in that team. But due to some reasons that we didn't get along, I was actually benched quite a bit and at the time, and once I had the chance to play in that football team, it was in a totally different position. That even though I had played football for the whole of my life, I never played in that position, not in any training whatsoever, and I felt completely that my voice isn't heard. I'm not being able to use the qualifications or the skills or whatever that I have in that team, and it turned out that was actually my last season within the team as well, and that actually led me to the situation that I didn't play football for quite some time as well. So this was a kind of like a personal story about being excluded and then how it affected me, a thing that I really cherished and loved, and I still like it, but the feeling of being excluded was somewhat I carried a trauma of it for some time, but I'm happy to play football again and enjoy it in every forms as well. So that kind of example of inclusion and exclusion from my side.
Yeah, and Owain Hopeaketo, I moved to Finland from the UK now nine years ago. That number keeps going up. Now I studied chemical engineering. I studied a couple of years chemical engineering here, and now I'm working at the trade union Academic Engineers and Architects in Finland, TEC. So we have a trade union who have a lot of international members, and in total over 85,000 members, all highly educated, university educated in engineering, ICT, architecture, and related fields. And I say now already that when I'm repeatedly saying about trade unions, if we have people not yet in Finland, trade unions here are normal, common, accepted organizations to support people in the labor market. But yeah, I am an immigrant in Finland, and I have overall felt very included through my time here. I think a lot of inclusion comes down to the small moments where someone asks, do you want this document translated beforehand, or doesn't even ask, but does it before a meeting, translates something for you, sort of thinks that you will be there. But maybe it's the Finnishness of me thinking also of the negative example of exclusion, that actually it's the first time I ever thought of myself as an immigrant, as maybe even a minority in Finland, was that we had a workshop to discuss how we can be better supporting international students. We spent 5 hours or so during the day, me and about 50 Finns, discussing this. And then it got to the evening and it got to the sort of hangout part of the day, and everyone forgot everything and everyone went back to their lives. And I realized that I was the only person in the room who maybe this was actually personal to. And that was the first time I realized, oh, even if I generally feel included in Finland, and it's been a great country for me, still I am an other in this context.
Yeah, thanks, Owain and Juho-Tuomas. So my name is Visa Varpenius. Very, very happy to be here today at the panel. I'm the country manager of Key Relocation Finland. We're a Nordic-based immigration, relocation, integration consultancy, primarily working with employers in the Nordic countries and also all around the world, assisting with situations where their employees, family members cross borders for one reason or another. I've been working with global mobility for about 15 years. Of course, my focus on inclusion diversity is based on cultural and language-based diversity. That's just where my expertise is in intercultural competence, intercultural leadership, these kinds of topics. But I've my kind of feeling of being included or excluded, I've actually taken. So of course, inclusion is not just cultural issues, it's just language issues, it's gender, it's disability, so many other things, which I admit I am not an expert in. But for me, I suffer from migraines. So for me, always when I feel included is when the employer is like, okay, no problem, we have this room, we can make it dark, you can lie down, all these kinds of things. It felt me really included. And then there's been other cases where the office is like an aquarium, there is absolutely no way to go and quiet down, and then I've really felt like, oh, this is like even a dangerous place for me, because it doesn't take into account my disability, which it can be. So that's my example of just like, well, I'm sure we'll be talking mostly about the kind of cultural diversity here, but just to note that inclusion, of course, is many other topics as well.
Precisely. Thank you all. The reason why I wanted to ask this question was to set the tone, but also highlight that these are really human feelings that all of us have experienced at some point. But now let's ask the big question. Do you think Finnish employers see inclusion as a business imperative? And if so, what drives this mindset beyond social responsibility? So quite a big question. This time, let's start with Owain, then Visa, and then Juho-Tuomas.
Yeah, well, in tech, it means I'm working a lot with our international members, 4,400 of them, and hearing a lot about their experiences working in Finnish companies, as well as my own experience. And I think it very much depends on the company about how high they put inclusion on the priority list. I mean, most will say that they care about it, but how high they put it up the list depends. It depends on the sector. For example, gaming companies are very good at inclusion. The age of the company, whether it's a Finnish company originally, whether it's an international conglomerate. Yeah, there's so many factors that do affect it. Yeah, for small companies who are focusing on the immediate, they have 10 employees, they don't maybe even have a HR department, they don't have a international inclusion knowledge at all. They're just focusing on maybe surviving to the next day, on making the profit margin they need to make. They think it's important, but they can't prioritize in the same way that Nokia or Supercell or the bigger companies can. And about what drives, I do think companies understand that it is imperative, a business imperative, but in terms of beyond social responsibility, it's just a need. We work a lot with Finnish universities now in ICT engineering. 1/3 almost of our university graduates are non-Finnish. Then you add to the fact that the gender diversity is increasing in engineering and ICT studies, or the fact that the understanding of neurodiversity, for example, is increasing. All of that means that if a Finnish company wants to get the best talent, wants to grow, wants to beat its competitors, they can't afford to not be being inclusive to especially international people, because the company next door will be doing that, and they will be getting the better talent, and they will be the ones who are thriving.
Yeah, what to add to this? I mean, that was pretty comprehensive. Absolutely agree. I mean, obviously there are companies that do take it very seriously, but we do also, like the smaller companies, yes, they will not have fancy strategies in place because they just don't have the resources for that. They don't have the personnel for that. It doesn't mean that they're not inclusive, because I mean, obviously inclusiveness is a lived-in experience. You can have all the strategies, you can have all the plans, but if it's not actually being implemented in day-to-day interactions, especially if management isn't committed to it, they're not actually living up to it, then it's very difficult for the organization to be truly inclusive as well. And also working in a multicultural environment and in an intercultural context, it's a skill as well, which can be practiced and trained. And of course, it's rather naturally trained when you work in those environments, but it is also something that you can be trained in. And all of these together, it's one thing to see that, yes, we have to do this because of branding, for like external reasons, but then do they actually realize that, yes, we have to do this exactly like Ove said, to be competitive, to actually attract talent and retain talent. That's the internal motivation. And if these two meet and it's actually implemented in daily interactions, then the company will go far.
These are very good points that you both had, and I think I had actually written down something that I might want to say, but I think I need to say something totally different here after this fine turns that you had. For us, it's because I work for the city of Helsinki, and it's the biggest employer in Finland. And for example, with us in the migration affairs unit and in my team, there has been always internationals working in my team. And our working language, for example, has been agreed that we can speak English or we can speak Finnish, and that's how we do it. Then again, it works both ways. So some have to kind of like work their way in this environment that not all things are, for example, in English. Then again, some people have to kind of like switch from the Finnish to the English side as well, so that teams can get along and get the things done. So, but this is kind of like the way that we started to do that. And that Visa mentioned about the kind of like that top-down thing. For us, there is a top-down thing, that there's a language policies within the city, for example, but it takes some time that it goes from top to down in these kind of organizations. So sometimes it's better to start in these smaller groups and smaller teams that you can actually and set the example and tell that, all right, this is how we work, this is the example that how you can do things. And this is just the language thing that, but we have discussed that what is the kind of like the right way to do this, and kind of like finding the ways that that is let's say that everybody feels that they're included and they can have their opinions said and they are being understood and these kind of things. And then sometimes we also discuss the possibility of actually speaking plain Finnish and what I usually say to that I am bad at it. I don't handle it too well. So again, seeing that, all right, even as a native Finnish speaker, I need to train myself for something else that I can have others included, and that's what we are doing as well. But that's just the kind of like the city example. But in other words, I'd like to see that a lot of companies are that, and from our service center, as all the international newcomers that are coming here use our services. So it tells that there's a great amount of companies that hire internationals, people from all kinds of backgrounds, and people, Finnish people that are returning back to Finland as well. And like Visa said, that I think it's going to be kind of like a thing that some companies that don't have it, it might be also so that some of them won't exist in the sometimes in the near future. So I definitely want to see it, but I'm not fully sure that whether everyone has it yet.
So we all agree that the maturity level varies in companies and that there is no one size fits all approach to inclusion. So let's continue by painting a picture for our audience. What are some of the best practices you have seen where employers help international talents feel included outside of office? And could each of you give one concrete example? This time, Owain, you can start, then Juho-Tuomas, and then Visa.
Not twice in a row and take all the good answers. But we have, as I said, something like 4,400 non-Finnish national members, and we ask them every year about their time in Finland, about how their employer is, about what they think the way Finland is going, and we got 750 responses this year. So talking from that point of view, we see kind of directly how employers are doing for them. Just under half, for example, said they received a lot of help from their employer or as much help as they needed. So their employer did well in about half of cases, but then about half said that they would have needed more help from their employers on integration in Finland. The main aids that they pointed out, we asked about what helped in work-life integration, isn't rocket science. It's translation technology. Since I moved to Finland in 2016, the ability to stick Finnish into a translator and actually work out what it's saying has got so much better. It actually can do it now. And even kind of live interpretation to some extent now works. And they said that companies kind of adopting that kind of technology and like that, it wasn't all on the non-Finn themselves to like be working out what is best, what supports them, but that the company is actually investing in that support. But then the other one was work-life social events, was the same thing that anyone needs from their employer. Just after works, hangouts, pre-Christmas parties, summer parties, whatever, that especially if you can bring your family and bring your kids, those were the things that really helped the work-life integration.
Those are very good examples what Owain said. I can agree basically to all of those. So not rocket science, keep it simple, but what I think it's important what the employee can do during the office hours is to set up the stage in a way that people will get to know each other besides their work roles. So once you actually get to know who the person really is, what they're interested about, then these connections will start actually happening off working hours as well. And some companies have it as simple as that they have different sports turns, hobby clubs, whatever, that these things are happening and that you can agree join with the different teams. And usually with this, the language, especially in sports, I feel that the language questions are very kind of like easily you find your way, and people are kind of interested to know more about each other and their backgrounds as well when you have something in common. So those kind of come naturally in these terms. And for example, I've asked a colleague to play pickleball. It's not that common sport here, so it's kind of like something that you can just, if you know that person knows something about the sports, that's already a good start. So that's like to some extent, it's like keep it simple. Then again, like what we offer as International House Helsinki is that we have a spouse program and friend program that can help with these kind of things. So the companies can also say that, all right, have you thought about this kind of thing that you could join, or your partner could join, or you could join as a family. And then one of the good examples that Owen said about bringing the kids. So as there's the day that you can bring your kid to work and these kind of things. So if your employer is joining these kind of like initiatives as well, so these are again that you can see that, all right, you kids get along. So maybe you could agree on a day at the park or these kind of things. So like start from the same interest, and when there's the crowd is set for having these natural connections.
Yeah, very good examples already, and absolutely agree with all of them. Maybe, well, I asked to say one, but just quickly rattle a couple. So, of course, support for the spouse with finding employment, finding their place in society, extremely important in Finland. One of the most common reasons for relocation failure is that the spouse doesn't find their place here. So, and there are services available from the public sector and private sector as well. So those, a very big thing. Providing language training, because we're talking about inclusion outside of office hours. That's a big part of feeling that you're part of society is being able to speak the local language, and specifically like during working hours. It's not reasonable to expect specialists to do their full working hours and then in their free time to also study a language. Like that's usually not really doable. So actually providing those during working hours at work, best case scenario. Final is to have a buddy system. So when starting, you're moving to Finland, you're starting a new place, you would have a buddy at your place of work whose task is just to be your friend, which sounds very corny, but to be a friend and, break those barriers, break the ice, introduce you to everyone at the office, and be that kind of contact to local community. So that is also a one very easily implemented solution that I do recommend companies to explore, and other organizations, of course, as well.
Thank you. These are really good concrete examples. But what would you say are the green flags international talents should look for to know if an employer is truly willing and able to support their integration? Like how might this show up in things like job ads, onboarding, or even team practices? Juho-Tuomas, you can start, and then Visa and Owen.
I think Visa had like the good points already in the previous turn that he mentioned that, for example, what I value, this might be somewhat obvious for some and for some it's not. But if a company, for example, is planning to hire you and they ask in the interview that, do you have a spouse? Are they about to relocate with you? What are their situation? Kind of in like, but they keep it in a kind of like, let's say, polite terms, but still that they kind of like inform that they're interested, of course, about you, but your family as well, because it's not just you who's moving here, and it's the family, and that's the biggest reason that things can actually go the other way around for the company as well. But some companies don't know this, and sometimes when I hear companies say this, I'm like, that's exactly what I want to hear, because it's the full picture that you have to take into account if there's a family involved as well. And then the other thing is, for example, the language thing. That's very important that Visa mentioned that sometimes it's very difficult depending on where you work, but you work long hours, and if you don't have the chance to learn the language as well. So if the employer already tells that, if you say that I want to learn the language, what is the way? Do they, for example, do you have like 1 or 2 hours a week that you can study the language? Are there courses available at the workplace, or what are these kind of things? And these are the things that I value quite a bit, and it's good that because for example, if you come here with a partner and the partner is unemployed job seeker, they can join the integration courses and learn the languages through that. But then the person who is actually employed, they also have to have the chance to learn the languages if they want to. So that and then the employer kind of like plays a big part in this. And then it's also kind of like the questions is that how is the relocation process going to go? How are the company going to help you in that? Is there actually going to be an outsourced company, or will the company do it themselves as well? So these are kind of like the questions that you could ask that from yourself that how I see the process would be going. Will it be smooth? Will it be rocky? Or these kind of things. And then once you ask these questions from yourself and think about the interview or the situation that you had with the employer, and then you can see that will it be a smooth ride or a rocky road in a sense. But of course, there's always kind of be things happening, but at least you know that somebody is backing you up.
Absolutely. And already at the job ad, does it say we will support you with the relocation? Because if it doesn't, they might even only be interested in hiring locals, so people who are already in Finland. And what kind of inclusion does that entail? So yeah, absolutely. What kind of support they're promising for you in the job ad already or during the discussions? Do they have an inclusion strategy or some kind of plan or playbook? That's an important indicator. Have they thought about this? Obviously, if it's a smaller company, okay, they might not have resources for it. But one other thing that I would maybe highlight, so if you're searching a possible employer, how diverse is their management team? Because, I mean, research also shows that is one of the strongest indicators of inclusion in the company as a whole. If it's a very monocultural management team, it tends to also struggle with multicultural teams, with intercultural issues. So that can also be a strong indicator. Obviously, if it's born global, it's from the very beginning, the company has employed internationals, it's kind of built in to the entire structure. Well, hey, that's probably a fairly strong indicator that it could be at least culturally inclusive. So those are some of the things that I would highlight.
Yeah, and I sort of thought that maybe, I mean, well, they have highlighted green flags already. So I was going to start by saying I'm not sure there are specifically about kind of inclusion. I just think there are maybe green flags of what a good employer is, and maybe that's the same point. But kind of when you look at the job ads, for example, are they performing anonymous recruitment, which now we are really pushing for as kind of that is the way to make the recruitment process fairer. So are they doing anonymous recruitment? Are they publishing the salary? It isn't to do with inclusion, but it shows that they are a workplace that understands what people are worth, and that sort of it's worth paying, or that they should be paying people, and that it benefits the job seeker to know the salary beforehand. Specifying the Finnish level that will be needed at work. Instead of either saying no Finnish or all Finnish, saying that this is a Finnish language workplace and we will offer support in Finnish learning, or that Finnish might be sometimes used in coffee breaks, or A1 level Finnish is needed, or sort of that they have thought about it. Informing when you've maybe at the interview or when you're joining of working rights, making sure that they understand that you might not have the same knowledge that a native Finn has. That maybe doesn't happen so often that they tell those working rights things, but I think it would be a really big green flag. And I also want to highlight that the Chamber of Commerce in Finland last week, or a couple of weeks ago, awarded the first companies the world-class employer seal of approval. And that is now going to be something going forward that every company can claim that they are inclusive to international talent, but now there will be a kind of brand that the Chamber of Commerce awards to certain companies for their actions, that they have sort of had an audit that they are doing well for their international talent. And that world-class employer scheme, if they have that brand, it is kind of going forward going to mean that they have a company. It's not necessarily if they don't have it, they're not, but if they have it, it means that they've been checked by experts that they are inclusive.
Thank you. These are fantastic concrete tips that I'm sure are beneficial for our audience members. And when we met before this event, the next question was something that you all had been thinking about. And it was, how can hybrid or remote work environments make inclusion of international talents easier or harder? This time, let's start with Visa, then Juho-Tuomas, and then Owain.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky topic, of course, because it's very situational. We have teams that are fully remote. You don't even have to be in Finland. That's how it works. Then we have teams that are almost entirely local. You have to be in office. But I mean, research shows that hybrid is often the best method. If it's fully remote, of course, then feeling membership as part of the working environment and actually having those kind of natural organic interactions with your colleagues, it can get difficult. So, and fully remote, if you have genuinely moved to Finland, you want to integrate here. Fully remote probably isn't the best option for that, but at least the hybrid model tends to support that. Of course, for inclusion in general, hybrid tends to allow and support different types of situations in life, be it disabilities, be it having kids, whatever it is. It tends to be more flexible approach to work. So really, really situational, but if you are moving to a new country, fully remote generally would not be the most advisable. Of course, there's like age group differences as well. So for younger people, remote tends to be the favored way. For perhaps the more senior employees, they tend to prefer to be in office. They're not used to the kind of virtual interaction as younger groups might be. So there's so many different aspects to this to consider. And of course, being flexible. So, if someone wants to be in office all the time, fair enough. If someone wants to do a hybrid, that's also acceptable. So being flexible with this as well can be key to greater inclusion.
I could be the cool person after this and say that only remote work, that's the best thing in life, and that's the only option to go, but that's not what I really agree on this time. But the thing, if I tell again from my personal point of view, like before COVID, I was in that situation that I worked remotely maybe once a month or once in 2 months. I was like, it's good to work at the office. Then when COVID happened, I was like, fully remote, this is the best thing in the world. And now when we are in the hybrid model, I'm again like, all right, this seems to be the best one working. So it's hard to say that what is the best for one different situation. And again, but what I think that is important that and what makes a team work well is that when the persons know each other. So I think that's the key to any a successful team, that they get along, they know their backgrounds as well. And again, in some companies or teams, this might be the case that you don't need to know the person that well, but I feel that that's the key for a successful team, that you get along, and then you can see the kind of like the rules of flexibility, that you work home from these days and then maybe for a whole week as well, or 2 weeks or whatever, but you have the set times that you actually are at the office and make the most out of it, because then there has been some researchers saying that working together and idealizing things person to person, it actually might be the best way. But let's see when there's more researchers as well. But it's again, like Visa mentioned, that if a person moves to a new country, only works for remotely, and then if there's no let's say social gatherings organized by the employer, then it might be a bit difficult. But so in that sense, I would kind of like, if somebody's thinking of what is the best one, I think that and when you ask your staff, there might be the answers to come to also to help with that. But it's also difficult when you ask, for example, employees that how should we change the current situation, and people are, let's say, rather reluctant to change these kind of like things. But it's also good to see that sometimes what is the best fit for the whole employer.
Agree with both, but I'll do it from the perspective of someone who went through COVID in Finland. If I don't know how much of the audience is already in Finland or just thinking of moving here, Finns are not always the most expressive people in terms of facial expressions, and also anyone that had a lot of Zoom meetings during COVID knows that like online is you don't get the same emotional connection with someone always. We maybe got a bit better at it since we've done it a couple of years, but that can actually it can be very difficult at times as there is the cultural difference of saying something and thinking, oh no, this Finn thinks I'm an idiot because they're not reacting on their face, and then online is even worse. So that's like one small aspect to it. But I think obviously when you're just moving to a country, hybrid is easier because you have time to during your work day help look after your kid before you manage to get them into a daycare, that sort of, or go and do something else during the day that isn't, you're not so locked to the office. And I think that is very common in Finland, that like hybrid is either that many workplaces, I think, other than ones where you have to be there. If it's optional and if it's kind of a specialist work, then I think hybrid is the way to go now. But it does have the disadvantages, like I said, having to have a lot of online meetings with Finns and not knowing what they think. But it just generally raises the barrier of social interaction, making that first reach out. And because when you're new in a country, your community kind of is your work, especially if you've moved here for work. That's one reason we see spouses struggle so much, because they don't even have the work network if they haven't got a job here. So kind of putting all of that online removes a huge important community. So I think yeah, hybrid is needed, and kind of we need to still maintain the fact that an international doesn't have childhood friends that they can go to and talk to on the weekends. So I think it's especially important that for a multicultural team, we are taking even extra steps to foster inclusion.
Thank you. One final question before we jump to our audience questions, and this actually relates a bit to what Owain was saying, and I think this one is crucial for anyone trying to survive in Finland. So as you mentioned, Owain, we Finns might not be known for our love of small talk. So what is the secret to befriend Finn at work or beyond? And whoever is feeling brave can go first.
I feel as the non-Finn, maybe I should tackle it first and then the others can defend themselves. Well, I moved here for university. I found making friends super easy. I always felt quite included. It took quite a lot of flexibility on my end, that people are going to speak Finnish around me and I'm not going to understand it. There will be times I have absolutely no idea what's going on and I just need to go with the flow. And I think that is a kind of a key part of it. Sort of being quite flexible. But Finns are, especially when you get people a bit older, Finns are quite slow to trust. They are very friendly. It's very easy to become acquaintances and to but then to become friends is this kind of next step, and it requires kind of overcoming this barrier of becoming trusted. And then when you're trusted, it's amazing. Then you're trusted forever unless you break it. But the barrier between is quite high. So sort of also going into it expecting that it's going to maybe take a while, more than you expect. But of course, then just having the same things as elsewhere, have shared interests, have hobbies, have things to talk about that aren't just work or aren't just the weather. Even if Brits and Finns have a lot to talk about when it comes to the weather. And just remembering that the coldness doesn't necessarily mean they dislike you, but that it's just the cultural differences.
And if I may add on what Owain said about the trust, then once you actually get the trust, I think it stays for the rest of your life. So then if you actually break the barrier, then you're good for life, basically. Or in the worst case scenario, if you don't get along then too well, then the Finn is stalking you for the rest of your life, basically. So then there's the other side of it as well. No, just kidding. But the other thing that Owain said is the hobbies. I think that when there's a natural connection, natural interest on something, and then as there's the stereotype that Finns are not too open, but it varies a lot with different places. I think in many places people are very open, very easy to talk with, and it's just one example that one of my colleagues said. And she's actually from Iran, and she said that Finns are not the kind of persons that comes to you and ask on the street that how can I help you, like if you're looking for something. But on the other hand, if you go and ask a Finn that how can you help me, I'm sure that they can. So this is the difference, that they don't kind of or we don't usually push ourselves and kind of come and say these kind of things. But once you actually do it for a Finn, I think you're going to be good. And the other thing is that, well, families with kids, there's usually it's easy to if your kids are in the same situation, it's good, and your kids have hobbies, and it's very interesting these days to see how Finland has changed. When example going to see kids football games, there's different languages are spoken and these kind of things. It's very valuable, and like different teams here also that there's a multicultural like sports team as well. So in not just the professional level but the amateur level, which is kind of like a very good starting point. And then one thing that I personally have that sometimes or in many cases, I don't know my neighbors' names, but then again, we have a dog, and I know every single dog's name in the whole neighborhood, and we can discuss about dogs forever, and they invite you to their home because there might be a small yard or a dog park or whatever, and then you can discuss for hours and hours, and you can see that these people and we also get good friends with. So I'm not necessarily recommending to get a dog, but that's a very easy way to get to know the people that live close to you.
Yeah, shared interests and hobbies break cultural barriers. That's true in Finland. That's true everywhere. What is also true, of course, everywhere is that once you've completed your studies, people tend to have like a set social group that they interact with, and it becomes much more difficult to make friends after that. If it's Finland, where it can be even maybe more difficult than average to make friends, that is of course compounded. But yeah, if you arrive to Finland for studies, it tends to be much easier. If you arrive for work, then maybe that work environment and again your hobbies is the kind of context where you could find friends here. One thing to of course add, like yes, there are these stereotypes about how Finns communicate and how bad at small talk, take things literally, and silence of course as well. That it doesn't mean that it's it's just a normal part of communication is to be silent from time to time. So even though these are stereotypes, they are based on fact, they're based on lived in experience, and it's good to recognize those and learn those because it will make interacting with Finns in general much easier, but then also finding friends, getting used to those little weird quirks that Finns have when it comes to communication.
Yes, and if we still have the time, what I want to mention about the Finnish small talk is that what I like about it actually is that it's not that common to ask like what's up in Finnish, but once you start asking that, people can answer to your question like good, or then they can tell their whole life story. So I think that that's the interesting thing about the Finnish small talk. It's kind of like the person who hears the question, it's their responsibility to get back with you with the answer. And sometimes it's very curious because it might be good or the whole life story. You never know, and it can be a very interesting story as well. So I recommend asking that from people if you're already here.
It's very
Precisely.
honest small talk.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. And now let's take one chat question. We have a few stories of situations where people have felt excluded or even discriminated. So here is one question that kind of sums up all of these other comments. So, just a moment. I face issues with Finnish employers that we are treated unequally for some reason. The same happened with another employer. I don't know why Finns do that, but it seems like a pattern. So despite of my story, how to address those issues or how to protect myself and why that is happening and how to avoid those situations. Owain, I think trade unions work a lot with these kinds of situations. So perhaps you could share a few words.
Yeah, so the role of trade unions is exactly, on a large scale, it is, of course, making sure that annual salary increases and important benefits like holiday benefits and things are protected. But on a more kind of personal level, it's about having the union representatives, having the shop stewards in the workplaces. They are a contact person. They kind of can't be discriminated against for being a shop steward, and they can raise a problem that an employee has addressed to an employer. Or otherwise, kind of union services and things will help to educate on what are your rights. But obviously, understanding what are your rights, there are a lot of cases of discrimination, and there are a lot of cases of exploitation. Unfortunately, too many. But kind of, it's also when you don't understand your rights, it's easy to kind of start seeing everything as discrimination. Especially when right now, when the job market is not as good in Finland as it has been. And so when you start, for example, getting rejection letters, you start thinking, oh, is this also kind of that they are like, is this just they're giving the jobs to Finns? And there are cases of that happening. But I think if people sort of know their rights, know how to advocate for themselves, know who to go to when these things happen, then ultimately the cases are decreased. Because maybe I'm too much of an optimist, but I do believe that most cases where it happens, it's as much down to kind of misunderstanding from the Finnish employer, also misunderstanding kind of how they could be better treating an international employee. And that kind of cultural misunderstandings or things being rushed and not being thought about as well as they should be. And I don't really think much of it comes down to malice, but maybe I'm too much of an optimist. But yeah, there's unions to support, and there is also many other types of associations who are available to support in Finland. It's a great thing about Finland is that we have associations for pretty much everything.
Thank you. While these experiences are unfortunate, I think they prove that these kinds of discussions are needed to discuss about the feelings of exclusion and inclusion and what kind of support systems there are. But I think that time really flew by with you, and I'm sorry to say that this is our time today. But thank you so much, Juho-Tuomas, Visa, and Owain, for joining us today and sharing your sharp and warm insights. This was a lovely discussion with you. And also a huge thank you to our audience for joining us today. Do follow Owain, Visa, and Juho-Tuomas on socials if you want to learn about more on Finnish work life. But for now, I thank you all, and I will see you in the next session. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.